Okay, we're going to be going over David Hume in this lesson, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a distinction between the rationalists and the empiricists. After Rene Descartes, or beginning with Rene Descartes, we have we're going to have an onslaught of modern philosophers who are going to accept the hyperbolic doubt of Rene Descartes. Remember, with Rene Descartes, he doubted all of his sense experience. Okay, this is the hyperbolic doubt, because that's not normal doubt. Okay, that's extreme, to doubt all of the things you know by sense experience. And so he doubted all of those things, but he ended up giving arguments that got it back. So he had this hyperbolic doubt. He doubted all of the things of sense experience, but then he gave an argument for the existence of a good God that got back his knowledge of mathematics. And then he goes on and he gives an argument of why he can know objects of sense experience. Listen, these later modern philosophers that come after Rene Descartes, like David Hume, they are going to reject all of these arguments from Rene Descartes, where he gets back knowledge of the world. But they are going to keep his hyperbolic doubt. But they won't tell you this most of the time. Okay? So David Hume and the philosophers before David Hume, like John Locke, they're after Descartes though. They accept the hyperbolic doubt of Rene Descartes. Okay? So within the modern philosophers, there are two groups. Okay? One group is Rene Descartes. They're the type of philosophers similar to Rene Descartes. In other words, they're the philosophers that say all knowledge, all true knowledge, all primary knowledge is gained by reasoning in the mind. This group of philosophers are called rationalists. So when Rene Descartes said, remember, Rene Descartes doubted the whole world, and what was his first piece of true knowledge? Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And he goes, I just reasoned in my mind to get that. So he's a rationalist. He's saying that his reasoning in the mind was responsible for that true piece of knowledge right there. So that's rationalism. Those philosophers are rationalists who think that. But then on the other side, you have the empiricists, which are a reaction to the rationalists. The empiricists, like John Locke, they're saying, boy, knowledge begins with experience in the world. You first burn your hand on something before you start. I mean, how can you deny the reality of burning your hand on something? That's real. Or you feel it. Okay, so David Hume is in this camp of empiricists. These empiricists say that knowledge, true knowledge, primary knowledge begins with sense experience. That's how you get primary knowledge, with sense experience. Now, that may be kind of strange for you to hear me say that if you've been following me here. Because I just said all the modern philosophers accept the hyperbolic doubt of Rene Descartes. And what's the hyperbolic doubt of Rene Descartes? They don't trust sense experience. But then we have empiricists saying that knowledge, primary knowledge, begins with sense experience. This is the inconsistency and the contradictory nature of the empiricists. Okay? So even though we're going to go over David Hume right now, and he's going to be saying knowledge begins with sense experience, primary knowledge is with sense experience, he has hyperbolic doubt. He doesn't trust his sense experience. And this is going to lead, what I'm telling you right now, if you're following me, this is going to lead to his devastating conclusion that he's going to give us about what we can know. Okay? So we're going to start with David Hume on page 465. And on page 465, David Hume is going to give us, first of all, David Hume is going to give us his philosophy on how human beings know things. We're still here, because he doesn't buy Rene Descartes' explanation, but he does buy Rene Descartes' hyperbolic doubt. So if you only accept Rene Descartes' hyperbolic doubt, then you have to give a philosophy of how you know things. Because most of these guys are scientists, they're philosophers, historians. They like the idea that human beings can know things and do science and stuff like that. And so Hume wants to give his philosophy to show how human beings know things. Okay, because he doesn't accept Descartes' explanation. But he does accept Descartes' hyperbolic doubt. Okay, so he's going to give his philosophy here. The liveliness thesis is on page 465. I'm going to read this part right here. By the term impression, then, okay, so follow me. This is going to be difficult to understand in the first reading. By the term impression, then, I mean all our more lively perceptions when we hear or see or feel or love or hate or desire or will. And impressions are distinguished from ideas, which are the less lively perceptions. So what David Hume is saying, first of all, is perceptions. Perceptions are everything. Okay? Perceptions are everything here. Listen, perceptions are what we receive from sense experience. Okay? So I would say that I perceive the chair. Okay? It's my perceptions that from my eyes that the chair is impressing itself upon my eyes. And so I perceive it. Okay, and then I form these images of sense perception that happen in my mind somewhere. Okay, so the main point is that perceptions are from sense experience. Okay, so we have perceptions with our eyes. There's perceptions with taste, with hearing. Okay, so normally in the old philosophy, a perception is different than an idea. Okay, so if you perceive the color red, like right now you think of the color red, or you look at something and the redness just hits you, that's sense perception. Okay, you're perceiving the color red, but that is different than thinking about the color red. So if you start thinking about red, like redness, what is it to be red? Right? You start thinking about the color and you're comparing redness with blue and things like this. Now, you are using the idea of redness. Okay? What David Hume is saying here, what he's going to say, is that our ideas are nothing but a perception. This is what he's going to say. He's going to say idea, and then here he's going to put an impression. Okay, so for David Hume, our ideas are just a perception. Whereas for Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas and Socrates and Plato, ideas were these immaterial things, these immaterial forms that human beings, that by which human beings know material things. And because they're immaterial, there must, whatever is understanding these ideas or using these ideas, coming into contact with these ideas, must also be immaterial. And this is where Plato goes on and proves, and Socrates as well, goes on and proves that human beings have an immortal soul. So there's a lot of background to the idea that an idea is immaterial, and it is a deeper understanding than just a perception that the things that hit your eyes. But what David Hume is saying is that idea is just a perception. Okay, so a perception is broken down in two ways: an idea, and then we have an impression. So when you see something and you touch something, there's two things happening here that can be happening. An idea could be formed and an impression. The liveliness thesis, what this is right here, this is the liveliness thesis. Okay, on page 465. What the liveliness thesis is saying is that impressions are more lively than your idea. They all come from perceptions, though. Let me explain this. If you are, I remember when I was a little kid and my mom was making tortillas on the burner. And I went over there and I touched like the pan, the griddle she was making the tortillas on. And it burned. I still remember how hot it was. And I mean, I was probably like 5, 6 years old. But I still remember. I'm a lot older now. So all those years, all those decades ago, I still remember how much that hurt when I touched it, how hot it was. Okay. My idea of the hotness of when I got burned, right? It is less lively than when it actually happened. Okay? When I actually did touch that hot material, when I touched that was the impression. Okay? That impression, when I touched it and I was like, whoa, that's hot. Okay? That is much more lively than when now, all these years later, I think about it. Okay? So what David Hume is saying is that our impressions are much more lively than our ideas when we think about it. Okay? This is all he's saying right now. This is why he says on page 465, by the term impression, then I mean all our more lively perceptions. See that? When we hear or see or feel or love or hate or desire or will. And impressions are distinguished from ideas, which are the less lively perceptions. Okay? Ideas are less lively perceptions of which we are conscious when we reflect on any of those sensations or movements above mentioned. In other words, when I reflect on that time I was burned, it's less lively than when it actually happened. Right? So moving on. Now, David Hume is going to give another thesis. Something called, and you could see this on the top of page 466. You could see the perceptions, the ideas, impressions, so you might want to check that out. But now he's going to go into something called the copy thesis. The copy thesis. If we look on the bottom and that paragraph in the middle of page 466, I'm just going to read the last couple of sentences. David Hume says, the mixture and composition of these belong alone to the mind and will. Or to express myself in philosophical language, all our ideas or more feeble perceptions are copies of our impressions or more lively ones. Okay? He's saying all our ideas or more feeble perceptions are copies of our impressions. So any idea, I erased it, but if you look on the top of page 466, the ideas, right? Remember, an idea is a perception. All our ideas are copies of our impressions. So ideas, they come from impressions. Okay, so when I burned my finger all those years ago, that's where I got the idea of hotness or of burning. All those ideas I have related to that experience, That's where I got them from. Okay? But the ideas are merely copies of that impression, that experience. Okay? But let me ask you this. What happens if you have a good piece of paper, something you want to copy in a copy machine, and you put it in there and you make one copy. And then you get that copy and then you put it on the copier and you make a second copy. And then you get that copy. In other words, you're getting a piece of paper right now that's been copied twice already. And you put that on the copy machine and you copy that. What if you do that 1,000 times? What if you do it 10,000 times? What if you do it 1,000,000 times? What if you keep copy? You get the 1,000,000th copy. Okay, this thing has been copied 1,000,000 times already. In other words, it's the result of each paper before it being a copy itself. That 1,000,000th copy, you're not even going to be able to read that thing, because the copy is never as good as the original. This is how your ideas are. Okay? Your ideas are copies, the copy thesis. Your ideas are copies of your impressions. Okay? So, one of our goals here, let me see if I can, let me read from Hume on page 467. He's going to give us some more insight on how this works. He says, right in the middle, 467, first, when we analyze our thoughts or ideas, however compounded or sublime, we always find that they resolve themselves into such simple ideas as were copied from a precedent feeling or sentiment. Okay, then he goes on. The idea of God as meaning an infinitely intelligent, wise, and good being arises from reflecting on the operations of our mind and augmenting without limit those qualities of goodness and wisdom. Okay, so what he's saying here is that even our idea of God, it's an idea. It must come from an impression. Any idea you have comes from an impression. Any idea. And what Hume is going to say is that if you cannot find the impression for your idea, then that idea is pretty much worthless. Okay? I have an idea of hotness. Where's the impression of that idea? Oh, I remember. It was when I was 6 years old and I burnt my hand when my mom was cooking. I burnt my finger. That's where I got that idea. Okay, so my idea of hotness, it's a good idea right there. I can keep that. How about I have an idea of love. Right? Because I always say, like to my wife or to my kids, I love you. So I have an idea of love. Let me check it to see if it's because we want real knowledge. We don't want fake knowledge. Let me check that idea to see if I can find the impression. Because if I can't find the impression, then the idea is no good. So what's the impression? Love, like I love my kids. Where did that idea come from? Did I like burn myself or something? Where's the impression? I love my children. I love my wife. I love my brother. I love my mom. Where's the impression? So I could verify that the idea of love is good and it's a certain idea that I can know. Where's the impression of that? When I took my kids to Disneyland, where's the impression? Listen, what I'm saying right now doesn't even make sense. It's not like hotness. I know I got the idea of hotness like when I touched something hot, or I went outside and the sun was burning me. I'm like, whoa, that's hot, right? So our idea from hotness, it's easy to find the impression. But where do you find the impression for something like love? Where do you find it? What about, let's think of another word here. What about justice? You believe in justice, don't you? You believe in fairness? Because justice is fairness. It's a very important word. People use it all the time. Where's the impression? Where's the sense impression? Like when you ate a piece of candy and it was sweet, did you get the idea of justice? Is that the impression for justice? Of course not. Doesn't even make any sense with what I just said right now. Where's the impression? Where's the sense impression for this? When you burned your finger on the stove? Of course not. That doesn't make any sense either. There is no sense impression for justice. Where is it? Listen, you got a bunch of these words that you use all the time. In fact, the most important words that you use throughout your life are like this. Like love and justice. And how about honor? Where's the sense impression for honor? How about duty? Like you have a duty to go to work. You have a duty to, you feel that you have a duty or obligation to take care of your family. That's what gets you up in the morning. Where's the impression? Where'd you get it from? Where's the impression for duty? Where's the sense impression that gave you this idea right here? Listen, what Hume is going to say is that we have a bunch of these type of words right here. We have a bunch of these. We have a bunch of useless ideas where we cannot find the sense impression. And so what Hume is going to say is that we don't really know these things. These are not real. The only things that we do know are like hotness, or coldness. You have an idea of coldness. Where's the impression? Where do you think you got that impression from? You went outside and it was 30 degrees outside, right? You got the, there was an impression right there of coldness. Or you touched it, you held an ice cube. You held an ice cube and it was cold, and that's the impression for your idea of coldness. That isn't that hard to figure that out, right? So you can know coldness, you can know hotness, and there's some other things that you can know. But what you can't find the impression for are these things. And there's a bunch of other things like this. Here's one. You can see that. That's cause. You use this all the time too. Every time you say the word because, you say, oh, I went to the store because I wanted to buy some fruit. Okay, cause. Especially in science. I don't even want to limit it to science, because you use the idea of a cause, of something being the cause of something else, is virtually everywhere. In the courtroom, we say the cause of this person's death right here was that guy right there. He did it. He killed this girl, this person over here. He's the cause of her death. And then so you have a trial. Try to prove it. And then in physics, that's all you do in physics, is you're trying to find the cause of something. What caused this ball to hit this wall with this type of force? Causes everywhere. Aristotle. We went through Aristotle's philosophy. His philosophy is that getting a definition of something is all based on finding the cause of something. Right? Remember, there's a material cause, formal cause, efficient cause, final cause. Like if you boil some water and your wife comes in, she asks you, hey, why are you boiling water? You say, because I want some tea. But where's the impression? Where's the sense impression for cause? The idea of a cause. In other words, I have a marker in my hand right here, and watch. What was the cause of the marker flying from my hand? Now you may say the cause was my other hand. It was me, I did it. Right? But what's really happening? Because the word cause, where's the impression? Where's the impression for cause? Listen, it doesn't even make sense when I ask you that. Your mind probably goes a little blank if you're paying attention to me here. Because it doesn't make sense to ask for the sense impression for this. Because there is no sense impression. Okay? So what is Hume saying? You can't even know the word cause. So because Hume denies and he shows, based on the reasoning from the hyperbolic doubt of René Descartes, he shows that we can't even know what a cause is. We can't know love. We can't know justice. Listen, what Hume is saying is you can't do science. Okay, there is no science, because science is about finding causes. So there's no investigation that we can start doing now. All we have is these impressions. Okay? And you have some ideas, but your ideas where you can't find the impression, they're worthless, like these. Okay? All you can know, when I go like this and I have this marker right here, and on my other hand and I hit this, all you can really know is that my hand, this hand, appears to be close to this marker. So you have proximity. Okay, they're close to each other. And then you have some sort of temporal dimension where my hand was near the marker before it fell down. Okay, these are really the only things you can know. This proximity and what happened beforehand. But you can't, what you don't want to do, according to Hume, is say that this hand was the cause of the marker falling down. Because the word cause, when you use it, is worthless. Because you cannot find the impression. This is why Hume explains this more on page 467. I'm going to, around below the middle. We may prosecute this inquiry to what length we please, where we shall always find that every idea which we examine is copied from a similar impression. Those who would assert that this position is not universally true, nor without exception, have only one, and that an easy method of refuting it. So if you want to refute this copy thesis, pay attention. You must produce that idea which in their opinion is not derived from this source. Okay, so the onus is on you, is what he's saying. Is you can refute it. Which idea do you have that's not derived from this source of impressions? Now we could say we have a lot of ideas not derived from our impressions in some way, or they're derived in a secondary manner, but within the confines of what Hume has limited us to. Within Hume's rule set, we have no backing for these types of ideas. Okay, within the rules Hume has given us. So, moving on. If we look at on the top of page 469, actually rather on the bottom of page 468 first, Hume says, Here, therefore, is a proposition which not only seems in itself simple and intelligible, but if a proper use were made of it, might render every dispute equally intelligible and banish all that jargon, which has so long taken possession of metaphysical reasonings and drawn disgrace upon them. All ideas, here's the important part, all ideas, especially abstract ones, are naturally faint and obscure. The mind has but a slender hold of them. Okay, so all ideas, especially abstract ones. Well, let me tell you something. These ones right here, these are abstract ideas. First of all ideas are abstract. Okay, every idea is an abstract idea. But some ideas appear to be more abstract than other ones, especially the ones where you cannot find the immediate sense impression. So these ideas for Hume are definitely abstract. By abstract, he means, you can't find the impression. What he's saying is these ideas, these metaphysical ideas, metaphysical is a term that's often used just to mean like beyond the physical. These are definitely beyond the physical, especially for Hume. Hotness and coldness, although they are abstract in a way, they are not totally beyond the physical because you can find the sense impression. You can just remember when you were holding the ice and you felt the coldness. But you can't do this with these ideas right here. Okay? So what this means is that all metaphysical terms are useless. So all those terms that Socrates and Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas were using to do philosophy and to do science, to find definitions, the term like form, actuality, potentiality, motion. Listen, do they use those terms in modern physics? Actuality, potential, motion, act, cause. I mean, they use these terms in modern physics. You can't do physics without it. You can't do science without using these terms. Hume is saying these terms are worthless. Okay, so there's no science going on with David Hume. This is the conclusion of Hume. And this is the conclusion of the modern philosophers at this point, after René Descartes. And this leads to the next philosopher that we'll see, Immanuel Kant. He sees the problem that Hume has left. And Kant is a scientist, and he's a philosopher, he's a Christian. He wants to show, hey, we can know things, especially morals. Like with David Hume's philosophy, you can't know whether something's wrong or right, because goodness and badness, those are also metaphysical terms that you can't know. So you can't even have a morals. You can't have a moral system. And if you can't have a moral system, you can't have a court system. See the devastating effects of the philosophy of Hume if we were to live it out. This greatly troubles Immanuel Kant. Because Immanuel Kant, like I said, he's a Christian, he's a philosopher, he's a scientist, and he wants to show, hey, we can know things for certain. And so Kant, which we'll go into later, he is going to offer an explanation in countering the philosophy of David Hume.